Hello, this is Mike at Gamefromscratch, and welcome to week 13 of This Week in Game Dev. Quick recap of the news and events that happened in the world of game development for the week ending February the 14th of 2016. And quite a bit happened this week, so let's jump right on in. Now, as always, there's always going to be a text-based version of this story. I will link it down below or bring you to Gamefromscratch, so if you want more details, look down below, and there is a link available. So let's jump right in. First off, we have our weekly releases from Unreal and Unity, as we've come to expect. Unity, we saw the release of patch 5.3.2, patch 3, or preview 3. Completely fixed released. There's absolutely nothing new in it, just a bunch of changes and fixes. On the other hand, we did see Unreal Engine did get a new release. It's 4.11 Preview 5, and this actually has functionality for animation, including a new blueprint that enables you to do dynamic simulation, physics simulation based motion changes, animations right in a blueprint. So some neat new functionality there, but otherwise it's mostly a fixed-based release as well. Now, next up we saw the release of BDX 0.2.3. BDX is a really cool project. I've covered it in some detail in the past on Gamefromscratch. There's a tutorial if you go looking. And what it is a Blender extension that turns Blender into a 3D game engine for libGDX 3D development. Very cool concept. So basically, you can create a 3D game using Blender as your level editor and libGDX and Java as your programming environment. And it actually integrates quite tightly into Blender. So it allows you to do things like define physics properties, advanced materials, animations, etc. And all of those Blender-specific abilities are carried over into the game side of things. So it's quite cool. Definitely worth checking out if you're in the Blender world, 3D world, or libGDX world, or preferably all three of those things. It's the perfect fit for you. Now, release 0.2.3 brings us a few new things. Some new lighting options, ability to turn off per pixel lighting for lower spec machines, improved profiling, game objects can now switch materials used on their mesh, and various other fixes. Next up, we've seen, and if you go to this link, you'll see there's also an in-depth tutorial I did in the past on creating a 3D game using Blender, libGDX, and BDX. So if you want to get started there, that tutorial should actually show you what is available. Now, Intel released a RealSense plugin for Unreal Engine. Now, RealSense is, to put it in no other terms, basically it's Intel's releasing cameras that bring Kinect-like functionality to the PC world. I don't know how well they're selling. I don't know how popular they are. It's actually pretty cool tech. I just don't think there's a big market for it. But they have worked very hard to get integration into a lot of different game engines, and now there's a plugin available for Unreal Engine. So if you're looking at adding motion controls to people that have RealSense compatible devices, so some laptops, some webcams actually support this technology from Intel, you can now programmatically support it directly in Unreal Engine via this plugin. Now, another neat release this week was EA STL. Now, STL stands for the Standard Template Libraries, and if you've done any C++ development, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But basically, the data and collections library built in the template library inside of C++. EA made a version of it years ago. I think this started around like 2000, 2001. And one of the big problems with the STL is the performance, especially on non-PC environments. So on the consoles and such, a lot of developers stayed away from STL because the performance just wasn't there. And EA made a performance-optimized version that they've been using in their games for years and years and years. And they did a limited release of this a couple of years ago, but as I said, a limited release. Some of the methods were just stubbed out, the license wasn't as good, etc. Well, they just did a full release of this library, so it supports all modern compilers. It's now under the BSD license, and 100% of it is there. So kind of exciting news if you're in the C++ world. So this is basically an implementation of the standard template libraries that is optimized and game-friendly and console-friendly, etc. So that's definitely cool to see. Next up is Valve announced, or Steam announced, or Unity announced, take your pick, that basically VIVE support is coming to Unity. Now, this kind of throws me a bit because I actually thought it was already there, but the AR Summit was going on this week, or the VR/AR Summit was going on this week, and now they've officially announced it again, I guess. But basically, the HTC VIVE, as a shock to absolutely nobody, will be supported in Unity. And pretty much everything is supported in Unity when it comes to the world of VR. So it's more of confirming something that already exists. But they're also going to be adding a new VR rendering plugin for extended functionality, but the degree of that actual functionality is, I don't know. But I guess it's technically nice to see that VIVE is coming to Unity for sure, for real, as opposed to for maybe, I guess. Anyways, that is an announcement this week out of the VR Summit. Next up, we have, this isn't really news, but this is something I stumbled across this week that is very, very cool. And what it is this guy has created a PBR, or physically based rendering viewport plugin or branch. So he's forked a copy of Blender to extend it. And what he's done is he's basically added PBR, or physically based rendering, to the viewport, to the preview in Blender. And you can see the direct results right here. So there's what it looks like normal render and with PBR. Now PBR has become very popular in recent years because of Substance Designer, Substance Painter, or Quixel DDO, which are basically what it does. It gives you layers like roughness or metallicness, etc. Like make more realistic materials, I guess you could say, and this makes it so that you can actually view them directly in the viewport within Blender. Now it's a fork, it is a completely separate branch of code, it's unsupported, it's one guy's project, but it's really cool. And he's actually done a couple of other things, like he's modified the lighting, the way the lighting works in a way that I think is much superior, etc. So if you're working in Blender, I actually highly recommend you come here and check out this video to see exactly what this guy has done. Another announcement this week was SDKBOX added Unity and Unreal Engine support. Now, SDKBOX is a project that started under the Cocos 2DX umbrella and was just recently, like 2 days before this announcement or 1 day before this announcement, was spun out. So it's no longer a Cocos 2DX project. And now it's on its own, and they're officially adding additional support. Now, what SDKBOX does is it's sort of for integrating third-party APIs brutally simple. So analytics and in-app purchases, etc. Libraries for doing stuff like that. Well, they've kind of integrated it so that you can mix and match and bring in these things with very minimal work, and they'll just work. The initial release for Unreal and Unity, however, only support their in-app purchases plugin. So it's very early on. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. It's very, very early on right now. But if you are a Cocos 2DX developer, however, you can see where they've gone with this. They've got several modules in that case, as opposed to just a couple like they've seen in Unity and Unreal. So you can probably expect to see those being added rapidly on top. Now, another release, and this one came just yesterday, or today, actually today, is Love released version 0.10.1. Not a whole lot new in here. Now, one thing that is interesting, I didn't link it here, is they've also got an experimental version working with them scripting to bring Love to the browser. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. But this has got a number of mostly fixes or lighter features being added. And then finally, and by far and away the biggest news of the week, is Amazon released Lumberyard. Now, Lumberyard is not technically new. What it is if you go back in time a little bit to about the middle of last year, Crytek was in a whole lot of trouble. There were stories out that Crytek were unable to pay their developers, that they were basically on the verge of going bankrupt, and then Amazon rushed in and saved the day. Now, if Crytek name means nothing to you, they're the makers of Crysis, a series of games. On top of that, they make CryEngine. Now, CryEngine is used to power a number of AAA games, Crysis obviously being the most popular, but on top of that, MechWarrior Online, for example, is made using the Crysis engine. And Amazon came in and gave them somewhere between $50 and $70 million. Depends on who you listen to on that one. But basically, Crytek's day was saved, and nobody knew exactly what Amazon got out of it. Well, now we know. Basically, Lumberyard is the Crysis engine, or yeah. So I think that's a fairly safe way to say it. Is starting from probably about 9 months back, they've pretty much forked it off, and now you can get a copy of the CryEngine for free. And when I say free, I actually mean free. Complete source being released, everything, you name it, it's all there and free. So if you are currently a CryEngine developer on, say, Steam, paying the monthly fee, stop. There is now a completely free version available that actually includes source code, etc. Now, I imagine CryEngine and Lumberyard from this point on are going to diverge more and more and more as they're developed by different people. Amazon has been hiring a number of game developers, bringing them in-house, companies such as Double Helix, who I assume are now leading the Lumberyard development. They've also offered up support and tutorials, etc., for learning materials for using Lumberyard. So, as time goes on, I imagine CryEngine as it stands and Lumberyard as it becomes are going to move further and further away. Now, you may be asking yourself, should I be using Lumberyard? Well, I did do a hands-on with it, so if you want a bit of an idea of what's going on there, I did do a install tutorial you can see here on Gamefromscratch, as well as on my channel here on YouTube, and you can see what CryEngine brings to the table. Now, truth of the matter is, it wasn't just Crytek holding CryEngine back from being the biggest of the big three. Unreal Engine and Unity are probably more flexible. CryEngine is definitely more FPS focused, so you are going to struggle a bit more to make your game complete. And on top of that, there is no 2D support, at least not yet, so there is nothing like Paper 2D or Unity's, I forget what Unity calls their 2D support, but there's nothing along those lines. This is a very first-person shooter focused game engine. Now, obviously, the existence of MechWarrior proves that you can also do third-person, etc., but when you start really moving it away from mission-oriented, shooter-oriented games, this engine might be a bit of a poor fit. Also, it is not really for small teams. Although Amazon is coming out and making the learning materials better, what exists right now, you're going to struggle a bit. And the programming languages, if you're curious, it's a C++ based engine, but there's full Lua scripting, and they've also got their own Blueprint-esque visual scripting system, flowchart type system set up. Now, where it struggles a bit is the importing tools are nowhere near as smooth as either Unity or Unreal, so getting your assets in is going to be tricky, and if you're a Blender person, doubly so, because there's no direct Blender support. Most of the importing and exporting is actually done via Max and Maya plugins, so if you're not using AAA toolchain, this is even less of a good fit. So if you're pure indie, it's cool news that this stuff came out, but this is probably still not the engine for you. If you're an existing CryEngine developer, or you're AAA looking to make a first-person shooter, this was Christmas come early. Of course, there is a catch, and I never explained the catch, and the catch is actually a very reasonable catch. Now, Amazon's big thing, their big drive, outside of obviously retail and selling you books and Goldfish and just about everything else on their website, is they're getting more and more into cloud-based computing. They are probably actually the leader in cloud-based computing. They're the first ones to market with S3, which is their storage solution, and EC2, which is Amazon Electric Computing, which is basically virtual computers in the cloud. And those are being used very predominantly in e-commerce, in gaming, in you name it. So they're already a really established player in that space. Ubisoft and Roxio, for example, both do all their server-side stuff using Amazon's cloud computing solutions. So if you do use the Lumberyard game engine, there's a catch. Your server component either needs to run on your own servers or on Amazon's. That's it. So really what this is a play to try and get more game support by offering the gaming cloud, pretty much. And you'll see that there's actually, you can sort of see in this screenshot right here, this AWS right there, is they're integrating the cloud right into the game engine. So your server-side stuff should be as transparent as it gets if you decide to use these two together. But what this means is you can't take and create a game server for a Lumberyard game using Windows Azure cloud-based serving, Rackspace, or Google App Engine, or any of the competitors. You have to use Amazon's or your own servers. Now, when they say or your own servers, I assume what they mean by that is physical servers. So what you couldn't do, obviously, then is run your own servers virtually on Microsoft Azure and host it there. So I don't know what the direct distinction or the split there is, but basically think of it as, for the most part, unless you run your own server farm, you're going to host it in the cloud somehow, you have to use Amazon's technology. And the plus side is you get a completely free game engine as a result. So it's definitely a good deal to certain people. Just don't get overly excited about it, especially if you're a zero-day experience developer. This is not the engine for you. It really isn't. Now, it's nice to see them coming in much more. And the other thing is they're pushing really heavily that they've integrated Twitch right into the game engine. I don't give a damn. I think this is a fluffy feature, to be honest. But if you're all about Twitch gaming and Twitch streaming from your game and you're making your game around Twitch, it is built right into Lumberyard. Although I imagine adding Twitch support to an Unreal or Unity game would be an afternoon's work. So again, it's not a feature that has me extremely excited. But the other thing that came with this is Amazon GameLift. Now, I said they do a number of cloud-based computing solutions. Well, what they've done here is basically made... well, the direct description says it there. Amazon GameLift, a managed service for deploying, operating, and scaling session-based multiplayer games, reduces the time required to build a multiplayer backend from thousands of hours to just minutes. So they're pushing really hard to get into that gaming space, even if you're not using the Lumberyard game engine. So it's definitely a huge development. It is the biggest development of the week, and it's why I've gone on for 7 minutes about it. And I'm going to stop now because I've already done a video on it, and I'm actually going to cover up a little bit more. I'm going to probably do some tutorials on it. It's new and interesting. A lot of people have interest in it. Even if you're, again, if you're a day one developer, you should just stop. It's not for you. It's not a beginner-focused engine. On the level that I say Unity and Unreal aren't really beginner-focused, well, this is extremely not beginner-focused. So you definitely don't want to be doing this if you're just starting out, for sure. But if you're a little bit more established than that, this is definitely one of those you should check out, especially if you're looking at hosting in the cloud to start with, because that tight integration will make things extremely easy for you, especially if you need to scale your game up overnight type thing. So that's where the cloud really shines. Now, of course, there's a price tag attached to all of this. So that's it. That is a recap of this week in game development, week 13 for the week ending February the 14th of 2016. Now, a bit of a note, I'll be a little bit quiet next week in preparation for an upcoming vacation, and I will be not doing a news story next weekend. I'm going to be somewhere tropical, probably drunk off my ass if things went well. So there's not going to be a lot of updating in the next week. I will probably actually not do a news story next week and actually double it up the week after, but it's possible I could do it Monday or Tuesday when I get back. So I'm not going to be gone for long, only 2 or 3 days. So there will be a bit of silence there. That is why. So I hope there's a lot of exciting things happen in the world of game development, and the next time we meet, we have a whole lot to go over. So that's it for the news. Thank you very much for listening. See you later.